Good afternoon, everybody. I'm so glad to have you here today as we share our conversations with community leaders. It's my pleasure at this time to introduce a special guest of ours today. Emily Grant is here. She's past chair of the Chamber of Commerce. She's one of my current board members, but more importantly, she's the face of SoCalGas throughout much of the region as public affairs manager for the company. Emily, welcome.
Thank you, Teresa. I am very excited to be here. And we're also so excited to have Yuri Friedman from SoCalGas with us today to talk about new innovations and technologies coming down the SoCalGas pipeline, pun intended. But before we get to that, we have a quick public service announcement from SoCalGas that includes a little look into my home during quarantine. Emily Grant with SoCalGas, and I'm here with my son, Owen.
Yes.
And we were just on the SoCalGas website. Why don't you show them what it is, O? Nice, SoCalGas.com. And we were checking out some of our customer programs. And while we were looking around the website, we stumbled across a couple of energy efficiency tips for the home, particularly in the kitchen, that I'm embarrassed to say I didn't even know about. 10 years with the company, and I learned a couple of new things, and we want to share them with you. The first one is, hey, Owen, do you need to preheat your oven?
No.
Do not preheat your oven. Unless you're baking something, it might be a good idea. But otherwise, if you're roasting anything else like vegetables, don't even need to preheat it. You're just wasting energy. Oh no. Okay, and our next one, let's get rid of that. This is a big one for me. You got to get rid of that favorite burner and use the burner that works for the size pot or pan you are cooking with. So we use this little one for a lot of Owen's extra treats and mac and cheese and stuff for dinner. And I always put it on my favorite burner, which is the front left. And it's the biggest burner we have. Why am I doing that? So this is a reminder. So if you've got the small pot, use the small burner. You'll be saving energy and money. Thanks for listening. Oh, do you have anything else you want to say?
Nope.
No, that's it. Have a great day.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Owen. It's always so good to hear my friends talk. So it's my pleasure today to really get down to official business. And that is a conversation with Yuri Friedman. He's the Senior Director of Business Development for SoCalGas. Yuri has a broad scope of experience in development and acquisitions of energy infrastructure assets. And we'll ask him later what that is. And that's part of his role at SoCalGas, where he manages a portfolio of growth initiatives with research and development activities. Prior to his current position, he held the position of Director of Commercial Development for Sempra Energy, and previously held positions as Director of Infrastructure Investments and Director of Corporate Mergers and Acquisitions at Sempra Energy. Prior to working at the gas company, Sempra Energy, Yuri held positions as a Manager Director of Fortress Investment Group and Vice President at GE Energy Financial Services. He is a geologist and has done work in Western Siberia on the development and construction of natural gas pipelines. He holds an MBA from Yale School of Management and a PhD in environmental science and research from the Weizmann Institute in Israel. Welcome, Yuri. And as we said earlier, we're going to be talking about a subject that I think you'll find very interesting. And that's going to be focused on energy transition and the need to balance reliability, affordability, and environmental attributes as we look to our energy mixes and the future of carbon use. So as we start our conversation today, I remind you to put your questions in the Q&A, and that way we can get our specialists and others to answer them. So with that, Yuri, welcome. We live in a modern world that's full of technology. And as we look at our complicated and futuristic generation that we are seeing, a lot of those modern futuristic devices that get us through the day to day use a lot of energy, and we all need fuel to power those sources. As most of our listeners know, fossil fuel has been that source of energy in the United States for decades, and indeed for the world. yet environmental concerns have put a lot of pressure on us to look at other alternatives. What do you see as California's future in energy?
So thank you so much for this question. And let me start by thanking Teresa, you and Emily for the opportunity to present at this event. I really always enjoy talking about the issues that we at SoCalGas are facing and are working on, because to me, there are few industries which are as maybe challenging, but as important, as vital to our economy and to our everyday lives as energy. I always take pride in the fact that on the hierarchy of needs, we are right up there with the safety and physical shelter and food, because energy is the really the essential ingredient of our life, and frankly, it has been for thousands of years. The transition we are undergoing today is really not the first one. If you think about this, mankind has been using biomass, quite simply wood, as a main source of energy. And coal was the great discovery that changed the civilization in more than one way. Then, of course, we went to discovery of oil, later natural gas, which was an undesirable byproduct of oil, became a valuable product. And of course, nuclear came along, and later renewable generation took off. So the reason I say it, I think it's really important to understand that there has been experience that we accumulated over the past centuries and frankly millennia as we transition from one energy source to the other. And to put it in perspective, when we say we transitioned, uh, about 3 billion people on the planet today still use biomass, wood, as the main source of energy. So let's realize that what we need to do today is to address the problem that is truly global. And the reason I am saying this is that solutions that we are developing here in California to address climate change have to be scalable globally. That is a critical element for them to be able to be successful. Or said differently, if we try something that works in California, but is not going to work in China, India, Malaysia, Indonesia, and elsewhere, then we will have failed. So true leadership is really figuring out not what could be done without regard to the economics, but looking at something which can be rolled out at scale and something which people can afford, and not just in California, but worldwide. That to me goes back to what you mentioned, that balance of reliability, environmental attributes, and the economics is what we are all trying to meet. And I firmly believe that clean molecules have equal parts to play with this along with clean electrons. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because California over the last decade has made tremendous strides on the clean electrons front. Quite simply, we built out in the state tremendous amount of solar and wind generation, and now power generation is much clearer now than it was a decade ago to a remarkable degree. However, the analysis which was done by preeminent consultancies of the world suggests that for us to be successful as a mankind, to keep the global warming from exceeding 1.5 degrees Celsius, there has to be contribution of clean electrons and clean molecules. And that's where the companies such as SoCalGas come in, because we, with our infrastructure, with our footprint, with our capabilities, are ready and willing to help transport, store, and distribute these clean molecules. One of the most exciting of them is hydrogen, but there definitely are many others. So, I'll stop here and would be happy to continue the conversation or to take questions.
Great. Well, I'm going to ask you a few more questions because, quite frankly, you've talked about things that I have trouble conceptualizing and putting into layman's terms. So when you talk about small molecules and modifying molecules and putting things together to create power, explain a little bit in conversations that your 10-year-old could understand what the process is.
Thank you. And I completely agree. These complex issues should be explainable in simple terms. So how do we use energy? We use energy in our cars, in our homes. We use it in power plants. we use it in the industry. There's a broad range of application which needs energy. Today, majority of these applications use energy in molecular form. Quite simply, when you drive a car, you fill it with gasoline or diesel. When you fly a plane, you fill it with a jet fuel. These are not electrons, they're molecules. When we plug our iPhone, when we use our TV, then we use electrons. So our energy comes to us in various ways. And the reason I'm talking about these two, because they complement each other. For example, we use electrons on the peak summer day when the sun shines and when we have solar panels on the roof or out in the desert. We sometimes have more sun when we know what to do with because there may be overproduction of it. However, when the sun goes down, we need to find a way to store this energy so that we can run our fridge and run our essential services, the waste water treatment plants, hospitals, fire stations. All this needs to function uninterruptedly, whereas renewables by their nature are intermittent. And clean molecules one of their roles is act as the energy storage, which allows us to bring energy from the periods where there is more of it that we can use to periods where there is not enough of it. Like, for example, either when there is a dark, when there is no solar and we still need energy, or bring it from periods where we oversupply energy to periods in a hot summer day when we need all energy we could use. So energy storage is a very important element of any energy mix. Low carbon energy mix is not going to be any different. Does that get to the level of being 10-year-olds, or am I still getting there?
You're getting there. I think this is great. So certainly energy storage is an important part from what you said. But explain SoCalGas, which we all think of a natural gas provider, and how you're balancing your portfolio against California's initiative to provide clean, reliable energy.
Absolutely, and thank you for the question. We're very proud that today we serve as the essential buffer between supply of energy and its demand. And I think it was really exhibited very clearly in the recent events where the power market got stressed and there were several instances of power supply interruptions. What happens is that when the demand for power spikes, when it's a hot day, and everybody turns their AC unit at the same time, demand for power spikes. Well, renewables cannot respond to it because renewables produce as a function of sun and wind. You cannot ratchet them up. They don't do that. They do what they can. And natural gas plays the key role of what we call following load, which is to say when demand rises, when the operators see the demand is going to rise, gas-fired power plants ramp up in order to meet that demand. And in the peak periods when demand is very high, up to 60% of that demand is met with a gas-fired power. So we today play a very important role because our pipelines are ready to deliver natural gas to power plants that then can ramp up on a moment's notice and cover those fluctuations in demand.
So if the governor pushes, as he has been, to completely move away from carbon-based fuels, such as natural gas, since you have pipelines in place, are there alternative fuels that can be used? And how is the gas company converting its way of thinking so that we can advance to these new clean energy methods?
Thank you. That's a wonderful question. And my life is made much easier because the agency in the city of LA has shown us how this can be done. So all I need to do is to tell you about their project. LA Department of Water and Power announced relatively recently the project where they're going to repower a large coal-fired power plant in Utah. What they're going to do, they're going to convert this plant. It's called Intermountain Power Plant. They're going to run this plant on mix of natural gas and hydrogen. And eventually they want to run this plant on pure hydrogen. They're working with a major manufacturer of equipment, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. And this plant is going forward, is going to start running on a blend of natural gas and hydrogen in 2025. I think this is the path that many other power generators will follow because, again, the molecular form of energy will be needed. It will be critical because we need to maintain reliability of supply. Even when the wind does not blow and the sun does not shine, we need to find clean molecules, molecules that when they burn do not emit carbon dioxide. Well, hydrogen happens to be that clean molecule because hydrogen, when it burns, combines with oxygen. Of course, what it makes is water. So what a remarkable energy carrier that has no greenhouse gas emissions, that when combusts turns to water. So we need to find a way to produce hydrogen in a clean way, to use it in the power plants, and then to transport it from where it's being produced to those power plants. But I think hydrogen is set to become a very important element of power generation mix of the future.
So as I understand, hydrogen is the most available element in our atmosphere, and it's readily available in its gas form. But how do you put this into a product? How do you convert it into energy? Because I don't see this energy as it floats around my house or outside.
A wonderful question. The simplest way to explain it is think about all the things that natural gas does today. Natural gas is actually quite ubiquitous because about a third of it is being used in power generation to burn it in power plants, to rotate the turbines to make electric power. Another third of it is used in the industry for industrial heat. Think about steel mills and other energy intensive applications. And the last third is used to heat our homes and to heat the residential buildings and commercial buildings. All these functions can be done by hydrogen because at the core of it, hydrogen, just like methane, is an energy carrier. What you do when you burn it, when you ignite hydrogen, it oxidizes, it combines with oxygen, which is abundant in the air around us. The byproduct of that combustion is water. So it has no carbon dioxide, no other harmful emissions. But what you get, of course, is the thermal energy. You basically burn hydrogen to produce heat. And whether you use this heat in a power plant, in industrial applications, or in home, it's the same uses that we today do for natural gas.
But we certainly can't take and strike a match and turn the hydrogen that surrounds us every day into fuels. So how is it being converted to a fuel that's actually usable to create heat and energy?
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely correct. And here's the paradox. Hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe, and yet it is almost not available in the free form. If you try to find H2 in nature, it's exceedingly rare. There's very little of it. So how do we make hydrogen? There are many ways to do it. Today, hydrogen is made mostly from natural gas. And it's the advantage of it is that it's a process which has been shown to work for decades. That's how all refiners today make hydrogen. The drawback of that is that this process, which is called steam methane reforming, it emits carbon dioxide, which obviously is a greenhouse gas. Now, another way to make hydrogen, and that is gaining popularity, is to take molecule of water and to electrolyze it, which is quite simply zap it with electricity and split molecule of water, which is H2O, into hydrogen and oxygen. That obviously is a very compelling way to make hydrogen because if you use renewable power to make hydrogen, you get zero emissions hydrogen. Better yet, when you then burn that hydrogen to use it for your applications, it turns back to water. So as long as you have the input of renewable energy into that, you actually have a closed system, which means you can run this indefinitely. You never run out of it because on a global scale, all you do is rent molecules of water to split it and then to combine back. So these are the two main pathways that are under discussion today. The challenge for us is to figure out how to make hydrogen in an environmentally friendly way with minimal, eventually with zero emissions.
Wow, it sounds like quite an exploratory mission. So tell me, is hydrogen safe? And a second part of the question, is it being used today in any type of commercial application?
Thank you. Hydrogen has been and is continuing to be used in many commercial applications today. Today, the vast majority of hydrogen is being produced and being used in refining of crude oil. So refineries use it in very large amounts, and that's about more than 2/3 of total demand for hydrogen. There's also demand for hydrogen in various chemical applications. But the good news about that is that the technologies of production and transportation and storage of hydrogen are very well understood because we have been making this commodity for decades. And there are, in fact, pipelines and storage facilities and distribution networks that do that. What we need to do is to find out how to use this old commodity in new ways by piping this into home as a blend with natural gas, by using this in the power plants. So we are talking about using the new old commodity in new ways, obviously in full compliance with the safety requirements, which we at SoCalGas are in the business of dealing with safety aspect of natural gas today. I think we have the good capabilities to make sure that we can supply hydrogen as safely as we supply natural gas today.
So you're saying that this fuel can be transported and delivered to customers using the existing infrastructure?
In some cases, that's true. In some cases, you may need to build new one. I think the solution will be a combination of existing infrastructure and the new one. Typically, my experience suggests that any time in any energy transition, existing infrastructure is going to result in a lower cost solution. Because again, remember, we need to think about affordability. And for anything to be adopted broadly, it needs to be affordable. The question is not technology, the question is economics. I think we, with our pipelines, with our rights of way, with our assets, we can help make this commodity cheaper by delivering this in a safe way, but also delivering this at scale. We are now starting work on analyzing how much hydrogen we can blend in our pipelines, how much hydrogen we can blend in our distribution systems. And this work is going worldwide because all over the world, in Europe, in Asia, in Australia, gas utilities are exploring how they can use their assets, their pipes, to help this transition from the carbon intensive fuel, such as methane, natural gas, to low carbon and eventually no carbon fuel, such as hydrogen.
Wow, that's fascinating. I know that the gas company has also been investing resources in exploring renewable natural gas. And I know that this is something that Emily and I have talked about often. So is this a complement to that or a substitute for?
It's a complement. I think it's a very good question. And that goes back to the suite of solutions for what I called clean molecules. In reality, there will be more than one way for us to get our energy with a low environmental footprint. And that will entail hydrogen, that will entail renewable natural gas, and several other forms of energy. Renewable natural gas makes tremendous sense to capture because, as you most likely know, when it emits into the atmosphere, it is a very potent greenhouse gas, much more so than carbon dioxide. So capturing this actually avoids a lot of emissions. And then injecting this in our pipes and delivering this, just like we deliver the natural gas today, allows customers to receive their gas, which has really no environmental footprint because all we do is capture that gas from wastewater treatment plants, from dairies, from other sources, from landfills, which otherwise would emit this methane into the atmosphere. So, so renewable natural gas, RNG, is absolutely an element of the solution.
So I know that recently the governor has talked quite a bit about 100% electrification for the state of California. How does the gas company play a role in this, and what are your thoughts on that goal for the state?
Thank you. So I think our role are multi-pronged. And to begin with, we know that we will need forms of energy which are flexible to back up forms of energy which are not. And renewables are, by their nature, inflexible and intermittent. Therefore, we do need those clean molecules that today natural gas plays that role. Tomorrow, it may be the renewable natural gas and hydrogen, but we absolutely need them. And I think this year, summer events demonstrated that we do need to maintain reliability, and molecules and storage is the only way to do that. So we see ourselves in some sense as the world's largest battery, where our 100,000 miles of pipe that are paid for by California ratepayers allow us to store energy in a very large amounts and release it quickly to smooth out fluctuations in demand. That's one. Uh, I'll add another, a little bit more nuanced point. When people talk about electric vehicles, which is a major driver of decarbonization of transport, the typical reference is to battery electric vehicles. There's a different type of electric vehicles. They're called fuel cell electric vehicles. Now, let's be clear, both battery electric vehicles and fuel cell vehicles, they're both electric. They actually share the drivetrain synergies. All they have is a different source of power. In batteries, that source of power is, of course, a battery, which is being charged by electric power. In fuel cells, that source of power is hydrogen, which is stored on board the vehicle. So to some degree, adoption of fuel cell electric vehicles that we can facilitate by providing hydrogen to where it's needed is actually our direct contribution to electrification, which is all to say that we at SoCalGas see ourselves as a very important and in many ways critical element of successful decarbonization.
So could you go out today and buy one of these fuel cell electric vehicles?
Today, Toyota is selling their fuel cell electric vehicles. They're called Mirai, which in Japanese means future. I encourage everyone to Google it out because the next generation Mirai that is going to go into production next year looks significantly, it's a major step from the existing model. But the fact is that these cars are being produced today. I was actually fortunate to visit a factory where they're being produced in Japan, and they are planning to increase their production by a factor of 10. So the company that produces them knows more than a couple of things about making low carbon vehicles. Toyota by far is the only company that's been successful or most successful in hybrids. Therefore, they have a very long time frame and they're very committed to fuel cell vehicles. That's one. Uh, the where fuel cells really shine is in the heavy duty sector because mathematics suggests that if you need to run a heavy haul truck for long distance, battery is not your solution because basically because of low energy density, you'll end up hauling the battery and not much else. Fuel cell by now is recognized solution to heavy haul transportation. And if you think about those trucks, of which there are at least 16,000, which haul containers from the port of Los Angeles and Long Beach, which is of course the largest port in the nation, decarbonizing those trucks by converting them into fuel cell electric vehicles would be a major step, not just in reducing the greenhouse gas emissions, but also importantly in improving air quality in the city of Long Beach and all around the freeways. So a lot of companies today are working on making the fuel cell vehicles a reality.
Well, that's fascinating because you look at different options as I'm in my role looking at vehicles myself and looking at how we can be more energy efficient, how we can look at protecting the environment, and certainly the application of these not just in California but on a much broader scale is going to be critical. Tell me a little bit about other countries and how they're making strides in this industry. Certainly, it's not something that SoCalGas can do in a vacuum.
I think you're absolutely right. And the encouraging fact about this that the momentum for introduction of these clean molecules into the energy mix is truly global, because I think everyone realizes that no matter what your energy mix is, reliability is the key. And having and the ability to store energy, large amounts of energy, is going to be more important as the share of renewables in a energy mix grows. Frankly, many areas of the world are, I would say, ahead of us in their adoption of hydrogen, especially. And European Union has adopted a very aggressive goal of building out a lot of electrolyzers to make a lot of clean hydrogen and use it across the applications. And they actually combine these goals with their recovery package. I must say that the clean hydrogen is also a plank of Biden administration. And I think we will need to see what the federal administration is going to do in trying to, frankly, to some degree, catch up where Europe already is. Tremendous activity in the world is happening in Asia and specifically in Japan and South Korea. You may or may not know this, but the Olympic Games, which were planned to take place this year, but now will take place next year, they're being branded in Tokyo as hydrogen games. And in fact, Olympic Village is going to be powered with the fuel cells with hydrogen, and athletes are going to be moved around in the fuel cell vehicles. So Japan and Tokyo are making a very, very prominent steps to introducing hydrogen to energy mix. South Korea is not far behind. They're working very actively on that. Another area which is very actively looking at that is Australia, because just like California, they have a lot of solar, and sometimes they have more solar than they know what to do with. So what they're looking at right now is not just using solar energy to make hydrogen for their energy needs, but they're looking to make hydrogen and export it as the energy carrier, just like we export liquefied natural gas today. Imagine how wonderful it will be for us to be Saudi Arabia of renewables, given keeping in mind the extremely high quality of California's solar resource and wind resource. Wouldn't it be wonderful to find a way to export this renewable energy worldwide, just like today we are exporting American natural gas to the rest of the world?
So do you see hydrogen gas being transported in tanker vehicles and things like that to these other countries, or is it such a small molecule that it can't be captured in that form?
It can, and it is actually now being transported. There is a pilot project that started running this year in Japan, where they're bringing hydrogen from Indonesia to Japan by ship. There are several ways of doing this. One is to tie it in a chemical form, and there's a couple of ways of doing this, not getting too technical here. The other one is to do the same that we do today with liquefied natural gas, which is chill it and use it as specialized tankers, just like LNG tankers, to transport that. And I can tell you that the major energy companies, Total and Shell and many others, are looking today at this emerging trend, because this repeats in my mind the path that natural gas has traveled, where it took maybe 30 years for natural gas to become globally traded commodity, when LNG became the linkage of North American, European, and Asian markets. Hydrogen may be on the same path. It has all the features of the energy carrier that can be transported and can be yet another way by which energy is being moved around the world.
Fascinating. So do you see the timeline for creating a commercially viable source of hydrogen as 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? And can it meet the goals laid out by the state of California to meet their energy needs?
Terrific question. Thank you for it. So the analysis that was done by McKinsey and Company suggests that hydrogen can add to about between quarter and 1/5 of the total energy demand of the world by 2050. It's 30 years out, but yes, that's a big number, because obviously that's a major contributor to decarbonization. The question that you asked is the right one, which is to say, can the costs come down enough for this to become reality? Because the question is not technology. Technology has been around for a long time. The question, can it be done at a cost that is acceptable to people, that is politically acceptable? And the way we think about this, the example that I always like to bring is renewable energy, is solar and wind. The first renewable energy projects which were built in California a decade ago, maybe a little bit more than a decade, 2008-9, the cost of energy was 10 times greater than it is today. So whatever the analysis, whatever the forecasts were back then, The reality massively surpassed those analyses and forecasts, and no one, including myself, thought that the cost of this energy can come down by full order of magnitude in a relatively short time frame of a decade. A lot of it happens not because we found a special technology or better mousetrap. A lot of it happens just because of economies of scale, because bigger factories are being built. These factories run at higher utilization, and that's what drives the costs down. Hydrogen is on the same path. And in fact, right now, the measures that European Union has adopted are going to result in a massive construction of electrolyzer capacity, which is going to drive the costs way down, which is going to start driving down the cost of hydrogen, much the same way it happened with the renewables. But policy support is what's essential to start us on this journey, just like policy support was critical in starting us down the path of renewables.
This is all really fascinating. How do you explain a little bit about how the California's Clean Air Initiative is going to impact businesses and the way we do businesses in California? And do you see the state as being able to meet the challenges that have been put forth in the time frame presented?
That's an important question, and maybe put it a bit broader. There are two sets of goals that we have at the state, or maybe two issues we need two challenges we need to overcome. One is the greenhouse gas emissions mitigation. That's a global problem. The second problem is a very local problem. It's the air quality problem, which also is very intertwined with the social equity, social justice issue, because there's no secret that many of communities with the lowest air quality are also communities with underprivileged communities. And today, natural gas can make some contribution to addressing that issue because natural gas vehicles have almost no emissions of the air pollutants compared to the diesel or gasoline. Tomorrow, hydrogen vehicles can be an important contributor to both. If we make hydrogen in a way that is environmentally friendly, if we make it from renewable energy using water, and if we transition our transportation sector to fuel cell vehicles, if we transition our industry sector, which oftentimes cannot be directly electrified, if we transition the sector from natural gas to hydrogen, and if we run our power plants, which are run today on natural gas, if we run them on hydrogen, we're going to not only to achieve the clean air goals, but we're also going to make a very meaningful step forward on the greenhouse gas mitigation front. And remember, we need to do this in a globally scalable way. Hydrogen allows us to develop this pathway so that people in countries that really do matter for the global success of this, the developing world, can replicate that. And by the way, these countries are very actively working on hydrogen adoption today because they appreciate the scalability of that. They believe it can be done.
Wow, it's a fascinating topic, and I think one that we all need to become more educated about. I always say to myself anecdotally, California on its own cannot solve the world's pollution issues. As long as we still have people in other countries contributing to the pollution that then blows across our oceans and across certainly state and international lines, we will never be able to, as one unit of a whole universe, solve the problem. So this is huge, I think, to see the world working together to solve this global issue. I'm going to encourage people, if you have any questions, to add them to the chat. Or to the Q&A. At this time, I don't see any questions, but I'm going to see if any come in the next couple of minutes while I give you a chance perhaps to answer any questions that I haven't poked and prodded you with yet, Yuri, today.
Of course.
So are there burning issues that you would like to contribute about the safety and the reliability of either hydrogen or other fuels the gas company is working on to create? Oh, Emily has a question too, but she needs to unmute herself.
I have a question. Yuri, I loved your perspective talking about how this is not the first time that energy has reinvented itself over and over again. And it reminded me of the medallion homes that we kind of tried this whole all electrification strategy back in the 60s, I believed, and found that it didn't work. What are some other, kind of just going through history with energy, what are some other sort of things maybe that we've forgotten about, or other strategies that we've tried sort of as we've developed energy over time?
Oh, thank you for the question. It's a wonderful one, Emily. And I agree. The energy transitions is a fascinating topic. Some scientists spend their lives researching this and writing books about this. I was fortunate to interact with some of them. I think the commonality is that typically these transitions take not even decades, they take centuries. And again, I bring us back to the fact that for a third of people on this planet, the transition from wood never happened. They still go out today and look for biomass, which sounds high end, but it's not. It's wood, it's animal dung, it's whatever can burn. Then bring it into their homes and they burn it inside, which has a tremendous negative impact on indoor air quality. And that's the reality of the third of people on this planet. We can't forget that. We live in California, which obviously with our standard of living, there's nothing that we can't do because the money is significantly less objection. Although in current circumstances, we have to factor in the affordability even here in America. But the developing world is what's going to make or break our travel toward mitigation climate change. So it's incumbent on us to work all together worldwide, because without that, the chances of us discovering something here that will be applicable, copy and paste elsewhere are slim if we don't collaborate. Fortunately, we were able to recognize that. And when I say we, I mean the community of industry, because frankly, as we talk to our colleagues around the globe, the issues are often the same. In northern Germany, the offshore wind overwhelms the need for power, just like here in the peak hours of the day, you produce more solar than you need. Just like in Australia, you have the same phenomena. So it's remarkable how many parallels you see. And even though the specifics and regional dynamics and politics is different, but fundamentals of energy supply and demand are actually quite similar. And many companies worldwide are working together, forming international collaborations to pursue that. One of the most prominent one that we are a member of is called Hydrogen Council. It's been formed 3 years ago on the sidelines of World Economic Forum in Davos. And they've accomplished tremendous progress by elevating the understanding of policymakers of what hydrogen can do. And that was so important for Europe coupling the economic recovery and an environmental push. It's something which Mayor Garcetti today at the conference, at the virtual conference which I attended, he said, we have to recover and reimagine. That to me was so powerful because we need to do both. But now is a wonderful opportunity for us to step back and think, how do we use the recovery package? How do we use the state support at the federal and state level to make sure that not only we put people to work, but we're also going to move faster toward reaching those environmental goals? So again, it's wonderful to see public and private sector working together in Europe, in Asia, and beginning it here as well. So I think that's a very powerful vision. That frankly is how energy transition looks like in real life.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Thank you.
Again, a fascinating topic. And one thing I think that we've emphasized here is we really need to look at how we not only make it accessible and the technology available, but that it become cost effective. And I think an article that I was reading today in the New York Times really highlighted this, where they mentioned that the Toyota Mirai, and I don't think I say that right, but it's Mirai, currently sells for about $60,000 before subsidies, where your other electric vehicle, your Tesla 3, sells for $3,800. A disparate difference between accessibility, affordability, and we need to all think about how to bring this down to the lowest common denominator and most cost-effective way of doing business if we're going to continue to pursue this route. And it means making it more accessible and to do more research in this area in order to do that, at least from my outside perspective.
I think you're right. I think the reality is that fuel cell vehicles today are behind battery vehicles. I think that's true. I will say that when I talk to Toyota, they have the perspective that is planning for decades. They know exactly what needs to happen for the vehicles to become competitive, and they are uh, guiding toward that purpose very, very clearly. They can tell today what the price has to be. So it is no secret for them, and they know it needs to be not in the 60s, not in the 50s, not in the 40s. It has to be. They know they have the number. They're giving people the number. So if they have that number, they have the conviction that they can drive the scale up and drive the costs down. And I've seen how it's done. It's very impressive. Japanese factories and Japanese manufacturing is designed to wring out the costs in a production process. And they're on that path. That's one point. The second point I'll make, so think about the executive order that the Governor Newsom has signed. To the extent we're going to stop sales of internal combustion engines, ask yourself, how many ways are there to decarbonize heavy duty transportation, which, by the way, is the largest emitter of greenhouse gases and the largest contributor to air quality. What we see on our streets is light duty. What we drive is light duty. Think about the size of the heavy duty engine and multiply it by its utilization. They're on the road all the time. It's the big prize that people don't see because these trucks are not typically in your driveway. There's only one way to decarbonize that sector, and that way is fuel cell electric vehicles. There's really no debate about this. Debate rages about whether fuel cell batteries are better for the short haul light duty. And you're right, so far Tesla sells significantly cheaper than Toyota. There is no debate in heavy duty because analysis has been done and the numbers suggest that fuel cell electric trucks are way to go, which is why Toyota is looking at them. They made an announcement that they are going to look at making heavy duty vehicles. So that to me is unavoidable. It's something which we don't see today. But as you said, this article in the Times and a couple of other articles recently, they shine light on the issue that we need to look not only at objects which are in front of us, like our vehicles in the driveway, but look at the numbers, at the data, and apply technology, apply resources, frankly, apply capital to address decarbonization of sectors which are large.
We have this great graphic that really illustrates Yuri's point, where it's a map of California with our freeway system, and it has asthma cases also kind of correlating. And if you remove the freeways, you can still tell where the freeways are because of where the asthma cases are. And I'll get you that graphic, Teresa, if you want to share it with the membership, but it really illustrates Yuri's point that is directly reflects the heavy duty trucking industry. It's those semi trucks that we see on the freeway that are the biggest emitters, and you can still see where those freeway shapes are on that graphic. It's fascinating.
Wow. Well, it seems to me that we all have, as I'm going to wrap up because we are out of time, but a lot of work to do as global citizens to really look at this issue, to look at new ways to fuel our future and move on to a clean and responsible way of looking at our ecosystem worldwide. So Yuri, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. Emily, please do share that graphic with us. And I think we'll also share the link for the New York Times article that was out today, because I think they all contribute to the conversation and really start people thinking about how fuel cells vehicles can be adopted and become a greater force within our community at large. So with that, I thank all of you for your participation today. Please join us again next week as we explore a new topic on our conversations with community leaders. Thank you. Thank you so much, Yuri.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.